We thank you for staying with us. It is still the conversation on Lagos Television. Sustaining efficient waste management system in Lagos is our focus. Now, with a large population, Lagos generates thousands of tons of waste daily, and managing this effectively requires community involvement and innovation. Joining us to unpack this is Jeff Adebowale. He is a policy development analyst, and he'll be taking us through this conversation. He'll be joining us via Zoom. You're welcome to the conversation, Jeff.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Lagos. Good morning, Nigeria. And good morning, my sister, for having me once again today.
Good morning. Now, from your perspective as a policy analyst, how would you assess the current waste management system in Lagos?
I'm quite excited, and this is the reason for my excitement. Basically, I think about 7 years ago, thereabout, when the administration of Governor Sanwo-Olu was going to come in, just before the end of the administration of Governor Governor Ambode, we had the opportunity to actually look at what was happening in waste management in Lagos State. And of course, after we had joined the Waste Management Authority, that's LOMA, to sort of clean up Lagos and got the PSP operators to come back to work and actually clean up Lagos. We drafted the policy document, which helped, waste management in Lagos during the first administration of Governor Sanwo-Olu. And the third level of the strategy, which was the third phase, was waste to wealth. And of course, we have seen that is beginning to happen. We're beginning to see the engagement of, some strategic engagement in that regard, where we can begin to, generate fuel to power and use the enormous, bioenergy that exists in Olushosu, in Ekwe, Ikorodu, and all the other dump sites. And so, yes, I'm quite excited that we're getting there little by little. There's still, of course, need for more investment in that regard. And of course, I like the strategy that we're adopting, as of course banning some, usage of some items, disposables and all of that are, the attitude of Lagosians, and arguably not just Lagosians, Nigerians generally around waste is not anything to write home about. So we need to sort of do a lot of work. But yes, I'm quite happy that we're beginning to see improvement across board. Yes.
Yeah. So I'll still come back to the Waste to Wealth project. But again, some people feel indifferent about proper waste disposal. Why is that? What are the common misconceptions about proper waste disposal that you need to address?
Thank you, my sister. When I talk about education as the foundation to the problem of Nigeria, and of course solving education solves a lot of problems that we have in this country. This is one of the things that I talk about. I find it very difficult and very difficult to understand how practically I'm hungry and I'm in traffic, or I'm on the highway, and I feel that it is right for me to drop trash on the road. I decided to take a bite of gala, and the wrap of the gala, or any sort of all those other sausages, and I dispose it on the street. And we see people on the street on a daily basis sweeping the street of Lagos, and yet we do not mind to still further drop things on the road. We're so careless. And like I said, again, I put this back also, of course, all the way back to education. If the minds of Nigerians understand the effect of what we do when it comes to proper disposal of waste, we won't have a situation where somebody will be dropping things on the road. The same way, we won't have a situation where rainy season is coming, and then what you see is that the moment there's rain, people bring out their trash and decide to put it in the drainages and the gutters and all of that. I mean, it is to show you the level of education that we have in this country, that people do not understand the magnitude of what they do. And so, I mean, I sometimes drive on the street of Lagos and I see people, which in Loma, and I'm not a staff of Loma, but of course a consultant, or I used to be a consultant to Loma, is that we see what we also call black spots. I mean, you see people carry their waste right in the middle of the night or very early in the morning, as early as 4:35 a.m., to come and dump waste right on the road. And it's disheartening, it's painful that even some of the operators who are supposed to be picking this waste don't also have the capacity to be able to do waste collection. So there are many things we can talk about. I know that the government is trying their best to sort of invest heavily, of course, as to PSP operations and what you also call subvention in waste management. But there's still a lot more to be done, most especially with the attitude of people as to how they take care of their waste. I mean, from the home front, we should be able to collect our waste, sort our waste from the home front, have smart bins. It doesn't necessarily have to be technology-driven bins that we should have all over the place, but at least be able to have smart bins where we can say this is degradable waste that we can put, somewhere, recyclable waste, and then of course solid waste that could be recycled. So by the time we separate our waste in such a manner, then it becomes a lot easier for waste handling and transportation.
I like what you just stated, but again, how many people, especially at the grassroots, know about these things that you need to sort your waste? Is the government doing enough in public education on proper waste management and waste disposal?
I mean, that's what I said, that the problem of Nigeria, I mean, if you talk about waste, there's that lack of education. If you talk about any other element of what is wrong in this country, it comes back to the same position. Some young people will tell you that education is a scam, but then you ask them the simple question, and it's not about mathematics, it's not about English, it's not about, but just common sense. And you see that, the way they will respond to you or how they sort of embrace those questions or those conversations, you will know that we're not properly educated. And so, yes, just like you asked, I mean, Loma, of course, that's the agency under the Ministry of the Environment, needs to do more with educating Lagosians, as to how to handle their waste. I mean, if I remember vividly, I mean, this was one of the key areas in our strategic engagement that we thought Loma should continue to enforce. It's not just only about managing waste collections and, dumping and all of that, but education is very key. And so we need not only celebrate what the waste pickers, the sweepers on the street, and what Loma is doing to keep Lagos clean. I mean, I see a lot of that on social media, but we need to do a lot more education as to how to handle waste and how to sort waste. And of course, there are community development association. I believe that Loma, if I'm right, I think Loma is sort of structured into 3 districts based on the senatorial district that we have in Lagos. The district office and the district heads needs to do more about, educating, people, and of course working with the local government to ensure that, people are well educated. And yes, of course, we have the environmental officers. I mean, Loma and the environmental officers need to do a lot more collaboration in educating people on how to handle waste.
You said something earlier that you just find people, there are dark spots, and you find people going there to dump waste. Now, illegal dumping of refuse is a problem. How do we begin to deal with this? Do you think that the enforcement is tangible enough, to stop this menace?
I mean, I wouldn't say the enforcement is not tangible enough, but the question for me will be, is it yielding the result? The answer is, in some areas, yes, but in most places in Lagos, no. And like I said, most of the time where you see those dark spots or where you see those black spots, as they're called, is that you would see that the people who dump things at those places do them at the very dark hours. I mean, very late in the night or very early in the morning. And so enforcement will not have been readily out there to do the enforcement. So if we flip the equation and we do the right education for people to understand the reason why they shouldn't in the first place, and maybe a couple or more enforcements are done, and people are arrested and punished for their engagement, hopefully this will sort of, make, the citizens to begin to change their attitude towards waste disposal. And of course, we also need to ensure that our operation as to waste picking for the operators, the PSP operators, are also efficient. Some areas their trucks cannot get there. I saw a compactor, and I know the operator, but I will not call out the operator online on TV today. I saw an operator whose compactor was literally bent over. I mean, the chassis, well, let me not say the chassis, the shock absorber and all of the hydraulic system was totally bent over on one side. I mean, literally the truck was going to hit the Ikorodu Road. If I mention the location, I'm sure the operator would know himself. I mean, this is an operator that operates around the Pedro Shomolu axis, who was getting on the Ikorodu Road, and I saw the truck and I shook my head. I'm like, I mean, this is what we're using to collect waste. Literally, that truck will, I mean, if it manages to get to Olusosun to go and dump, I'm sure we'll spend close to 1 hour on the road because it couldn't really move and it was bent over. So when you talk about infrastructure as well, that's also a problem. So if the infrastructures are right and the waste collectors have the right infrastructure to collect, and they can get to every street and get there at the time that is being designated, I mean, people will not be forced to go and look for a place to dump their waste. Also, there are places where those compactors cannot get into. And we then have, infrastructure that can go, maybe a sort of a tricycle format that can go into some narrow areas and go and collect waste in some suburbs, and of course ensure that that is then being transloaded into bigger compactors that can then take it to the dump site for processing. I mean, those are some of the things that we have clamored for, but we are yet to see being implemented.
Because I was going to ask you that the activities of the PSP operators as well, if you were to rate them, how would it be? Because I have heard cases of people complaining that they do not come to collect their waste, and then you can't keep storing waste in your house. You need to, you need to throw it out. So how would you also assess the activities of these PSP operators? Are they meeting up to?
I mean, the Association of Waste. Yes, I mean, the Association of Waste Managers of Nigeria, Howard, will be angry with me because I know them very well, and they'll probably say, hey, Dr. Jeff, this rating that you are giving us, that you gave us on LTV, wasn't good enough, But again, I will be honest, and I'll tell you that my rating or my assessment is, like I said, is very poor. I mean, if I remember vividly, during the first term of, let's say about 3-4 years ago, thereabout, I think about 4 years ago, there was some conversation around helping the PSP operators to sort of upgrade their assets, because we did classification. I mean, these are the projects that we did. I mean, my company did for Lagos State government. Apart from writing the strategy document, we audit the sweepers on the road every year, as much as we audit the PSP operators. And so in classification of those assets, I mean, we said A, B, C, and C were the ones that needs to just be disposed of entirely. B should be upgraded. And of course, C also A should just sort of, continue the operation, because we sort of graded the assets. But we knew that Lagos State had a shortfall of those assets, and there was a design. And I think Mr. Governor Sanwo-Olu, actually had an investment plan to sort of help to raise finance for the operators to be able to buy assets and of course pay over a period of time. And I think if I'm right, there was a conference that happened within the association and the executive of Loma to sort of present this offer to the operators to engage this opportunity to improve their operations. But I mean, for what I still see, I mean, there's still a lot of gaps. I mean, assets that are on the road that are used for collections are very poor. Yes, I can tell you that I know that many people complain. I remember, of course, my own estates in Lagos, Bagada Phase 2. Sometimes our waste is literally littering the road in the estate. I mean, we try as much as possible to contain it within the reservoir that we have, the bins that we have, and a lot of the time spills over because they don't come as at when due. So, I mean, these are the challenges that the operators need to do more, but of course they need to improve the asset, and the government needs to sort of find a way to help the operators, maybe license more, but apart from even licensing more people, help to provide such support for the infrastructure that would help with waste collection.
All right, now let's move to the smart bins. You mentioned it earlier, and I said I was going to come back to it. So the state government introduced the smart bins for homes and businesses, for effective waste management. Now, how effective do you think this smart bin initiative has been in improving waste collection in Nigeria? And what are have you been able to, access and then been able to pick some holes in it? Let's look at the pros and cons.
Yeah, I mean, implementation is always a problem in this country. I mean, waste bins are smart, they are forward-thinking. But then again, if you look at the population of Lagos State, vis-a-vis, again, and I'll say this with all sense of, humility and respect for the citizens of Lagos State, is that the level of education, and this is not about certificate, I'm not talking now about, I mean, it's ridiculous to think that a big man would drive through the street of Lagos and will still dump waste on the road, and we see that almost on a daily basis. So it's not about certificate or the kind of car you drive and all of that, but majorly about educating ourselves on the understanding and the importance of why it is important for us to ensure that we manage our waste properly. So if you talk about waste bin, and of course talking about the smart bin, the question is, even the one that is not smart, are people using it? I mean, if you talk, it is ridiculous to think that, there's a canal behind, Bagada Phase 2 that separates Bagada Phase 2 from Pedro. And if you take a walk out of Bagada Phase 2 into that canal and you see what happens along the shoreline of that canal, I mean, it's sad, it's disheartening to see the level of waste that you find in the canal. And so this is because of the attitude. It's not because whether you have a bin that is smart or not. So again, smart bins are nice. I know that during the tenure of Ibrahim Oduboni as the MD of Loma, he launched the bin. But again, the question is, how was it engaged? Was a lot of Lagosians, did they engage acquiring those bins and all of that, which I don't think that happened. And is why we're still seeing a lot of waste on the street of Lagos. So again, it's not about the smart bin that's the problem. It's about the attitude of the people. And we need to educate the minds of the people, and then, of course, have solid enforcement that ensures that, we change the attitude of Lagosians, as to waste management.
We can't talk about waste management and not mention the circular economy. Now, how would you assess the state's progress in embracing circular economy principles? And then we also have the waste pickers. How would you assess, or how would you their role in ensuring that effective waste management is gotten in Lagos State? How would you assess that too?
I mean, I speak passionately about the question you've asked me, and this was one of the things that when we wrote the strategy document, we sort of wanted to solve that element in a smart way. And I believe we had engaged the person of the former MD, Ibrahim Oduboni, actively But again, some of the things that are important for, you and all our viewers to understand is that there's the element of insecurity in that particular sector. If you are on the street of Lagos and you see somebody pushing their cart for waste, you would ignore them. You wouldn't want to have anything to do with them. But one of the things that we have seen and reports that have, has gotten to the governor, of course, the Minister of Health, trickled down to Loma, is that it poses a lot of insecurity in the sense that most of these guys use those carts to transport arms and ammunition or, things that they use. And we deliberated it actively. And I remember I sat in a conference of a certain group called Rethinking Cities, run by a very good friend of mine, DG. And to a lot of the conversations is, yes, we know that these guys actually could be useful, to waste picking and transportation. But the problem is that there are some bad elements within that sector or within that group, and they use that as an opportunity to sort of house arms and ammunition and sort of perpetrate evil at the dark hours. I remember, actively, many years ago, close about 20, 30 years ago, thereabout, there used to be a location opposite Bakada Phase 2. And I speak about this because that's where I grew up, between Phase 1, Phase 2, Pedro, Shomolu, Obaniko. That's Anthony, Maryland. That's the hub that I grew up and I've been living for close to 3 decades. Just opposite what you used to call the Charlie Boy bus stop, NCI, used to be some sort of land that were not vacant many years ago and was used as a dump site. It used to pose a lot of insecurity at night for people who come in, in the evening when you're coming back from work. There used to be a lot of robbery incidences, between Charlie Boy and NCI because of those areas were very dark and sometimes still now even dark. But thank God that those lands opposite the Bagada Phase 1, Phase 2 have been developed, and I think Flower Mills and some other guys have taken over most of those land, sites, and so it has reduced the insecurity. So, but I know for a fact that that secular economy is required in Lagos at some point to a large extent. But if we can smartly sort of restructure how we engage that sector, there's a likelihood for us to be able to fix the problem. And so one of the things that we have suggested is that anyone who wants to operate at that level should be engaged and registered to work with the major PSP operator within that cluster. So if we pick Agege, for example, so that I stop talking about Shomolu Kotafe region that I grew up in. But if we pick Agege, for example, there's an operator in Agege. I can't remember now some of the names, but some operators exist in Agege. But then there are some locations within that region that you will probably allow the waste pickers and those guys to work. But when they work, there should be a sort of a location and registration for all of them. And then there's a location where they all go to aggregate their waste and bring it to the operator. And, so from their car, they sort of transload it into the compactors or, any of the roll-off, and then move to the dump site. If we can sort of coordinate the engagement that way, we can eliminate, and possibly, at least if we can't eliminate 100%, we can reduce the possibilities of, having such instances where that informal sector, that secular economy would then become a problem to the state as to insecurity.
When we talk about effective waste management, we cannot leave it all to the government, but I'd like you to share some effective ways that people can develop better waste management habits.
Basically, like I said, from home, you start the process of recycling. And again, that's of course, you sort of sorting your waste from the home front. So you know that the ones that are biodegradable, your food, waste and all of that, you could sort of, turn them into manure. And there's a way you could sort of at home separate all your remaining food items and all of that. And if you don't have pets that will eat them, you could sort of have a way that you can turn them into manures for your private gardens that you can use to grow your small vegetables, at home. And so you don't necessarily always have to go and buy weedu and buy small pepper and all of that, because you could have again, now this is me also giving out a lot of my strategy. Anyway, you could have what we also call the tower, farms behind your house. I mean, not something big, something like a flower pot, but in a tower format. And then you can use your food waste, the biodegradable ones, sort of manure, and sort of use that to grow stuff at home. So that eliminates some waste that goes into your trash, that goes into the dump site. Right? All the disposables, recyclable items, plastic bags and all of that, you could aggregate. Of course, you reuse. I mean, most of the disposable plates are reused anyway, so except the ones that get broken and you can't do anything about it, you have to dispose them. But when you also sort of aggregate those and put them aside and give it to, there are some points where you could go and sell your plastics, whether PET bottles and all of that. So when you aggregate all of those, you can sort of aggregate them and find a mini recycling collection point within your estate or within your area and go and sell them to. That also reduces the number of waste that you would present, to waste collectors. And then the ones that are solid waste that you can't do anything about, you can't use them for manure, you can't recycle them or you reuse them. Then you can aggregate those and put in your waste. So, what you will then discover is that there is a huge reduction in the amount of waste that you put in your bins that then goes out, for the waste collectors to pick. That's sort of the beginning for me, where we can start from the home front to sort of be smart about how we manage our waste.
All right. Thank you so much, Jeff Adebowale, for your time on the program talking about sustaining efficient waste management system in Lagos. Thank you so much for your time on the conversation. Do have a lovely day. All right. The conversation.
Thank you for having me, and do have a lovely day too.
You too. The conversation continues after this. Please stay with us.
The views expressed on this program do not represent that of the producer, management of Lagos Television, or the Lagos State Government. They remain the perspectives of those expressing them. Thank you for staying with Lagos Television.